The Lantern in the Forest. In a small, quiet village nestled between towering mountains and an endless forest, there lived a boy named Eli. Eli was born with legs that did not work as they should. While the other children ran through meadows, climbed trees, and splashed in the river, Eli sat at the edge of it all, watching with a longing smile. He never spoke of it, but deep in his heart, he wished he could run. Run so fast that the wind would sweep through his hair, carrying him far beyond the horizon. His grandmother, a wise and gentle woman, often told him stories in the soft light of their small flickering hearth. She would speak of ancient forests where dreams took shape, where birds sang songs that could heal broken hearts, and lanterns led wanderers to where they needed to be. Eli listened intently, imagining every word. His grandmother's stories were the bridge between his little home and the great unreachable world outside. One chilly autumn evening, when the air smelled of wood smoke and fallen leaves, Eli sat by the fire as his grandmother placed an old lantern on the table before him. It was small, with a brass frame worn smooth by time, and inside was a flame that burned steadily, even though Eli could not see any oil to fuel it. "This lantern has been passed through our family for generations," his grandmother said softly, her wrinkled hands resting on Eli's. "It has led many of our ancestors to places they only dreamed of." Eli's eyes widened as he stared at the flame. "How?" he asked, his voice a mix of awe and doubt. "Sometimes, Eli," she said with a small smile, "it's not our legs or arms that take us where we need to go. Sometimes it's the light we carry in our hearts. And sometimes," she whispered, leaning close, "a lantern like this can help us see the path that was always waiting for us." Eli did not quite understand, but he nodded. That night, he took the lantern to his small bed and placed it on the table beside him. The flame glowed warmly, casting soft shadows on the walls. He lay down, his eyes fixed on the gentle flicker, and as sleep began to wrap around him like a heavy quilt, he made a quiet wish. "I wish I could see the forest. I wish I could run." The moment his eyes closed, something magical happened. Eli opened his eyes to find himself standing, not sitting but standing, at the edge of a vast and magnificent forest. His legs felt strong beneath him, as if they had always been that way. The lantern was in his hand, its golden light spilling out and painting the path before him in soft, shimmering hues. The forest stretched endlessly, with trees so tall their branches seemed to touch the stars. Fireflies danced like tiny constellations, and the air smelled of moss, rain, and secrets waiting to be discovered. Eli took a cautious step forward, then another. The sound of his feet crunching on fallen leaves was a song he had never heard before. A song of freedom. He began to walk, and soon his walk turned into a run. He ran faster and faster, his heart soaring with every stride. The lantern's light stayed with him, guiding him deeper into the forest, and for the first time in his life, Eli felt truly alive. As he ran, the forest revealed its wonders to him. Trees whispered stories in voices like wind, their leaves glowing gold and green. Streams glittered like ribbons of silver under the moonlight. Birds with feathers as blue as sapphires flew alongside him, calling out as if cheering him on. A family of deer paused to watch him, their dark eyes reflecting the lantern's light. Eli laughed as he splashed through a brook, feeling the cool water rush over his feet. He climbed a hill, each step effortless, until he reached the top and gazed out over a sea of trees, their canopies lit by the silver glow of the moon. For a long time Eli stood there, the lantern's flame steady and warm in his hands. "This is where I'm meant to be," he whispered to himself. Night after night, Eli returned to the forest in his dreams. Each time he closed his eyes, the lantern's glow would guide him back. He explored waterfalls hidden behind veils of ivy, caves where crystals hummed soft melodies, and meadows where flowers bloomed in colors he'd never seen before. In the dream forest, Eli was free, unbound by his body's limits and filled with a joy that no words could capture. But as time passed, Eli's grandmother grew ill. The house grew quieter, the fire in the hearth smaller. She spent her days in bed, her voice softer with each passing day. One evening, as Eli sat beside her, the lantern in his lap, she reached out and touched his hand. "Eli," she whispered, "have you found the forest?" Eli nodded, his eyes shining. "It's beautiful, Grandma. I run there every night." She smiled, her eyes closing as if picturing the place he described. "Then you've found the path, my boy. Even if you can't see it now, your feet know the way." That night, as Eli carried the lantern back to his room, its flame seemed to dim, and a heavy sadness settled over him. When he fell asleep, the forest was there waiting, but this time the air felt different, quieter, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. At the base of a tall hill, Eli saw a figure waiting for him. It was his grandmother, her face glowing softly in the lantern's light. She smiled as Eli ran to her, tears streaming down his face. "Don't cry, Eli," she said gently. "I will always be here, in the light that guides you." She touched the lantern, and for a moment, its flame blazed brighter than the sun, bathing the forest in gold. Then slowly she faded into the light, her warmth lingering like a final embrace. When Eli woke the next morning, the house was silent. His grandmother was gone. Years passed and Eli grew into a young man. Though his legs remained weak, something had changed in him. He began to move more, first across the room, then to the garden, then to the edge of the forest. Every step was a promise, every movement a tribute to the dreams he carried. One day, Eli sat on a hill overlooking the village. In his hands he held the old lantern, its flame still burning bright. Around him children gathered, their eyes wide with wonder as he began to tell them stories. Stories of the lantern, the forest, and the dreams that carried him. "You see," Eli said, holding the lantern up so its light shone across their faces, "sometimes the path to where we belong isn't walked with our feet but with our hearts. And sometimes if you carry a little light with you, you'll find the way." As the sun set, the lantern's flame burned on. A golden beacon of hope, glowing brighter with every story Eli told, lighting the way for all who dared to dream.